So my name is Dan Beck. I am the director of LGRMS. We're going to talk about the 2022 GMA Safety and Liability Grant Overview today. And again, we're going to talk really focusing on the grant requirements and changes, but even if you are new to this process, we'll go through the whole thing. We're really just going through the brochure piece. So if you have a brochure and you've already read it, that's a great start. I'm going to kind of reiterate some of the things within that and give you some tips on how to expedite your approval of your grant. And then at the end of this, we'll talk generally about how to complete your safety action planning and loss analysis. And those are required for members that have $100,000 premium or more. So the GMA safety grant results, as you can see from this particular slide, we've been very generous over the years with over close to $4 million since 2014. And the grant has been in existence longer than that, but that's when I started here. So a lot of money has been paid out. As you can see, last year in 2021, we paid out $353,000 in GRMA and $287,000 in WCSIF, the Workers' Compensation Grant. Where this somewhat differs is the amount we have allocated to these particular grants. So historically, we've been around $400,000 or so for GRMA and $350,000 for workers' compensation. So the limits have been actually increased by the board in 2020, which will allow us to, again, not have to wait until after if we reach that limit. Typically we go back to the board to get additional approval for additional funding. We don't have to do that anymore. So that allows us to approve things on a more timely basis. A question was asked, will this be available after the webinar? And that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I should have mentioned that earlier. I'll be sending this presentation along with the brochure, along with some other supporting documents, and the webinar recording to all those that have registered for this particular webinar. Thanks for the question. Participation or eligibility. What do you have to do to be eligible for this grant? Well, again, pretty basic common one is you have to be current in all payments and contributions and fees. So if you owe fees to GRMA, owe fees to workers' compensation, we're not going to process that grant. Participation by any member employee in at least one LGRMS sponsored training program within the past year of the grant request. So the expectation is that within 2022, you're going to attend one of the many regional training activities that we have out there. So right now we have scheduled roads liability training, we have some law enforcement training, we have human resources or personnel liability training, all kinds of different things, safety coordinator. And it doesn't have to be you necessarily, it just has to be one member of your particular team that or your entity, your city or county to attend this. If you do that within 2022, you have met that expectation. In the past, because of COVID and because of other things, and we didn't have these regional training, we would allow you to attend 3 webinars. And again, you attend those 3 webinars, you register, you attend, and then you write a paragraph for each of those webinars, what you learned, and that's within the same year, 2022, and or you take the crisis coordinator program training. Those 2 options are still available. So I would highly recommend you, again, take advantage of training. You shouldn't have to be required to attend these. These are excellent trainings. The crisis coordinator training is excellent. we'd really like to see at least one person from the administration side, HR potentially, or elsewhere, and then one place from law enforcement. So if you have a sheriff's office or if you have a police department, we think that would be the best place for people to attend. And what that training does is the crisis coordinator training. It really helps you identify crisis and then be able to really ask the questions, what do we need to do? Because what happens if there is a crisis and you're already dealing with that, if you say the wrong things or if public officials say the wrong things in the midst of that crisis, it makes it worse. So you can find the LGRMS training at LGRMS.com under the events tab. There's a new calendar. You can go on there and register for that particular training. And again, if you want to see the webinar training that we're providing, just look at we send out emails on basically every couple of weeks with upcoming webinars. Again, this was on there, so more than likely you've seen that particular. But if you don't have either access to LGRMS, let me know. You don't need to have a sign-in or account to get to the event calendar. If you aren't getting these emails regularly, let me know and we'll add you to that distribution list. And then the next one is applicable, current in response to recommendations made by LGRMS during on-site visits. So as you know, we have 4 field reps throughout the state of Georgia, and when they come and visit you and do evaluations, they will make recommendations. We would like to see you not necessarily have those recommendations completed, but you should respond to those initial recommendations within that required period of time. Designation of a specific person as the member safety coordinator. So the expectation is that you will have a safety coordinator within your entity, whether it's a city or a county or an authority. That should be somebody that's identified as the safety coordinator. Ideally, that would be somebody with some level of leadership skills. The purpose of the safety coordinator is that they are going to help coordinate safety. They don't have to do all safety, and actually we don't want them to do all safety, but we want them to help coordinate training, coordinate communications, coordinate inspections, coordinate whatever it might be to make sure you're following this particular process. In a lot of places, it is the HR manager. A lot of places, it is will have, if they have enough employees, they'll have a risk manager. Sometimes it's a department manager, and those are all good choices. Sometimes, though, people select the person on the backhoe, and they might necessarily have the best leadership skills or coordination skills. So I'd ask you to look at that and make sure that that person that's a safety coordinator has some leadership skills and is able to take on some of these particular tasks. A question came up. Please add me to your distribution list. If you can, versus sending it in here, I would appreciate it if you send me an email. I thank you for that, but I'm going to erase that. So just send me an email. My email is dbeck@lgrms.com. I'll have it. It's at the beginning of the training, and I'll send it to you if you're attending today. And you can just respond, put me on a list. If previously, here's another question. If a previous year evaluation or survey was conducted prior, where I can find that information. If you have it, it should be, you should have a contact who that was sent to. If you have questions about that, just send me an email, please, and I'll search that for you, and I'll get you your recommendations to make sure we're taking care of that. I'm new to the county, and that's the response to that. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Great questions, great interactivity. Show proof of a written policy on holding safety meetings and/or training. Oh, before I go on to that, the expectation is the safety coordinator has to attend training. So we have several modules, up to 5 to 6 modules, but the expectation is that during the first 3 years of the safety coordinator's existence, they will at least attend one training. So we'd like them to attend Safety Coordinator 1, Safety Coordinator 2, and Safety Coordinator 3. Those classes do not have to be done in sequence. You can, if you are available to attend Safety Coordinator 2, and before you've done Safety Coordinator 1, you can do that. But the expectation is within 3 years, you will attend that. You don't have to wait 3 years to take it. You can take all three at once. You can take 2 and then take 1, whatever the combination is, but the expectation is that safety coordinator will have all 3 trainings within the first 3 years of their assignment to that particular role. Within the show proof of a written policy on holding safety meetings and training. This is a pretty simple policy. I have a sample of that. If you need that, all you have to do is send me an email. I'll be happy to send you that simple policy. It's basically 1 or 2 paragraphs. You can develop your own, but the expectation is you're going to have at least one of these safety meetings once per quarter is required. Here's a question. Is the safety coordinator training available online? It is not at this point in time. We do have it, again, several different events scheduled right now from a regional perspective, and that was our spring classes, and then we'll have several different events scheduled in the fall. We may conduct it online via webinar, but at this point in time, we do not have plans to do that. So great question. Thank you very much for that question. Show proof or written policy on requiring a minimum of 2 safety inspections per year. Again, same basic thing. You can write your own policy, or we have a template. The expectation is that it's not just going to be your policy, though, that this is a policy, both of these things will be approved by leadership within the organizations, and it will be approved by the mayor and or city manager and or city elected official or highest position within non-elected position within the city or county. Again, show proof of the safety meetings. So those other 2 things, as long as you have the policy, you really only have to show them once. These 2 things, show proof of safety meeting, training policy, and inspection policy, you have to do that every year. So we want to see proof that you're conducting your quarterly safety meetings. We want to see proof that you're conducting your inspections. And again, you can send those in with your application. The next one is show proof there's a written mandatory seatbelt policy signed by the current mayor and administrator for the city and executive authority. So again, we have a standard policy. We can send you that, but we want to make sure that it's signed, and that's within that policy. Could be in the handbook. That's great. We want to see some way that you're delivering that policy to your employees. That delivery could be through the handbook. That could be delivery could be through employee orientation. It could be through annual training. It could be whatever way, but we want to see that you're providing the training on that. And then the last bullet on here, for those members with premiums over $100,000, show proof that the members' leadership and safety team have reviewed applicable loss trends over the last 5 years and developed goals and associated action plans. So 5 years is not important, but we want to see at least have you have looked at the trends over 3 years, and that so if you want to know, are you required to have that action plan, just let me know. I can search and see what your premium level is for 2022 and be able to tell you if you need to have an action plan. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So here's a question. Does the training online webinar count as a training hour? I have taken a few that certificates were issued. So the issue, again, the expectation is for online training. Again, they have to be the LGRMS webinars. If you've taken those, then you have to have 3 of those, and you have to have written a paragraph description of what you learned within that particular training. So you keep your registration information, you'd have a paragraph, and that's what you'd send in to meet that expectation for your grant requirements. Okay? Good question. Here's the premium level, and this is how grants are applied or allocated based on your premium level. So premiums $200,000 plus, you'll receive $10,000 in eligibility. Again, that's what your max grant level is. Premiums between $60,000 and $200,000, you'll receive 5% of premiums, so whatever that particular dollar amount is. Premiums between $6,000 and $60,000, you'll receive eligibility up to $3,000. Premiums between $1,000 and $6,000, you'll receive 50% of your premium. And then premiums less than $1,000, you'll receive $500. So examples, the city of Happytown pays $330,000 in GRMA and $143,000 in workers' compensation, or WCSIF. They would be eligible for $10,000 GRMA grant because their premium is over $200,000, and the work comp grant would be $7,200, which is 5% of $143,000. Again, bullet point number 2, the city of Partytown pays $15,000 in GRMA and $3,655 in workers' compensation. So they would be eligible for a $3,000 grant from GRMA because that's the range, and $1,800 from WCSIF. Again, lastly on this page, the city of Cleanville pays $94,000 in GRMA and $58,000 in WCSFI. They would be eligible for $4,700 in GRMA and $3,000 GRMA grant. So again, the math is pretty easy. If you want your specific what you're eligible for, let me know. Send me an email and I can get you that information. So again, in the past we have had GRMA grant will also reimburse 25% of the cost of IT in a box with no supporting documentation, and we'll still continue that. But we're going to limit it to 5 years of grant reimbursement. So if you have applied for that and you have received 5 years of reimbursement for IT in a box, or VC3 as they're called now, then you're only going to receive that for 5 years, and then you won't be eligible for that any longer. Again, continued program guidelines, a documented mandatory use guideline, or SOP, signed by the department head and either the mayor, top administrator, or executive director must be included for each safety equipment listed. So this is really only for high-end specific equipment. So let's say you're getting trenching equipment. We want to make sure you're having a policy behind that. We want to make sure you have rules and regulations on trenching. We want to make sure you're providing training. We want to make sure that you're using it correctly, because we don't want you to use this equipment without that. Again, I have policies, template policies for each of those things. If you get AEDs, we want to give you, we want to see a policy. So again, the worst thing you can do is get an AED, it just sits there. We want to make sure you have a location for it, that you're going to train people on how to use it, that you're going to maintain it. And the same thing with confined space and body armors and cameras. Little things like road cones or traffic equipment, things like that, we don't need a policy. Or you got equipment like firefighter equipment, we don't need that. We know that more than likely you're using it correctly. Grant funds will be distributed on a first come, first approved basis. So again, based on the limit where we're at, if we've met our grant limits for that grant, that person that has applied first that we receive will be the first to receive the approval prior to anyone else. And if we don't have money, that person that didn't meet it won't receive it. So it's really to your advantage to get your applications in quickly. The purchase must be made during the current calendar year that runs from 1/1 to 12/31. That's the expectation, and we have not changed that, but it's something I wanted to emphasize. This is the change. So the review of the 2021 grant applications will begin on February 1st, so it's already occurred. All grant applications must be received or postmarked before September 30th, 2022. The issue is that we've moved that. So that used to be October 31st. We've moved that up because so many people put in applications at the end of the year. On October 31st and a little bit later, we got probably 40 or almost 50% of our applications came at the end of the year. We did not have time to process them, and we don't want that happening again. So make sure you have your applications to us before September 30th, 2022. Here's a question. Is the grant just for hardware, or will it cover cloud storage for cameras? Well, I'll answer that a little bit later, and I'm going to show that to you. But yes, it will cover cloud storage. When will the applications be available? Again, they are available currently. So, Holly, I'm not sure, but this is the GMA call. I'm going to be doing the ACCG call a little bit later. That'll be later this month. So I'm not sure when the ACCG applications, but this is strictly for GMA members right now. So if you are an ACCG member and you're listening to this, this is only for GMA members. Please avoid submitting multiple grant applications. So, again, we're going to talk about applications. Please don't have multiple grant applications. It causes confusion and really causes issues with your approval process. So you can add things after you've sent it. Well, for instance, let's say that you have availability up to $10,000 in a safety grant, and you are only approved for $6,000, and I send that to you, and you say, hey, we'd like to add these two things. We can do that, but I don't want you to send multiple grant applications. It causes confusion and causes us problems, so be aware of that. The grant request must be signed by the mayor or top administrator for cities or executive directors for all other organizations. The purpose behind this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is that we don't want the department manager of public works sending in an application and then the department manager of another department sending an application in, and they're two different applications. Now, again, that will cause us confusion. It needs to be submitted on one application, and then the elected official, highest ranking elected official, and or top administrator for cities and or executive directors for authorities will have to sign that to say, hey, I approve that. And again, you can load that up with as many items as you want. We're okay with that, and actually encourage it. Again, here's procedure to request grant monies. Determine you have a need that fits the intent of the grant program. personally, I think there are a lot of people that do a good job of this, one member in particular, and they actually have a safety committee, and one of the things within the safety committee they do is they ask what we need, and then they help prioritize those things. You don't have to prioritize it before you send it. You can send a whole list of things, and then you can prioritize those things after they've been approved. You determine all the requirements have been met, so make sure, we'll talk about the checklist, you make sure all the requirements are met, you send in the application. Before sending it in the application or complete the application, you gather all the required documentation, we'll talk about that later, and then you submit the application to us. The best way to submit the application is just sending it to Courtney Stepter at her email there, and that's also within the brochure, I believe, or you can email it, but it's much better, again, if you send it via email. There's a tracking device, there's a way to track it, and we don't lose things when it's via email. If you haven't received, again, wait to receive confirmation, denial, request. If you don't receive a confirmation that we've received that within 2 weeks, you need to let us know. And just send us an email back and copy me on that email to make sure that you're getting a confirmation, and we'll get that back out to you. Grant funds will be released upon final receipt of paid invoices, and we'll talk about that process. If additional information is requested, gather the information and return to LGRMS. Any delay in getting us invoices, any delay in getting us that additional requested information will delay the approval of your particular grant application. Again, program administration, everyone, and we're going to talk a little bit about approved items or pre-approved items, but pretty much every item that you will have is approved will be reviewed by the GMA approval board. Again, that's the committee within GMA, and they look at that, and basically the question they'll ask is this item going to help that member reduce either workers' compensation or property and liability claims? If it does, it'll be approved. If it doesn't, more than likely it won't be approved. So those are the questions. And when we talk about the submission of grants, that's something you need to focus in on. Timeline, again, we're expecting the average payment process within 3 to 4 months. In some particular cases where people have submitted things that are approved, it's the right time, we've gotten approval and paid that member within a week or two. But depending on the situation, depending on if you've provided all the documentation required, if you haven't purchased the items, when you get back those items, and when you apply for it, if you're applying for that grant and at the same time at the end of the year when everybody else is applying for it, it's going to take longer to get that approval to you. So get that approval into us as soon as you can. Here's the application. It's a fillable form. It's pretty simple to go through, and we're going to go through that, what's expected right now. So the first section is this important instructions. I'm going to read these to you. Please complete only one application per member. Applications can include both GRMA and WCSIF items. So you can do workers' compensation and property liability items on that one grant, and we actually encourage that. Please use your computer keyboard, and again, just type it in. We want to avoid handwritten stuff because it's very difficult to decipher. It's hard to see, especially on names and email addresses, what specifically is in there. All communications will be conducted via email. It makes it easier for us if we can do things via email. If you can't, please let me know. But if we want to do things via email, it's easier. It's easier to track. It's easier for us to process these things. Data clarity and accuracy is critical to the swift approval of your grant. Again, type it, check it over, Make sure there are no spelling errors, especially in phone numbers and or email addresses. It makes things very difficult when we don't have accurate information. Incomplete applications may be sent back for completion. Click on the blue square at the bottom of the application page to access the link to the items requested for reimbursement Excel template. And again, I'll show you where that is and what that is. So again, this is the first part. You can see within this, you'll have you can put the city name or the authority name, the date of the application. You'll have the mayor or highest elected official. If you don't have an elected official, if it's an authority, don't worry about that section. Go down to the next section and go into the city manager or highest non-elected official. We want the key grant contact, and the purpose behind this is a person that all communications will be sent to. So it's really critical that we have this person's email address and phone number. And then anybody else on that should be included in the approvals. So again, when we send an approval email on the initial part, we're going to send that to everybody on this list email. So it's critical that their email is accurate because we want them to know. It'll be addressed to the highest elected official, or if they don't have a highest elected official, it'll be addressed to the highest non-elected official. In a designated safety coordinator, we want to know when you've completed safety coordinator 1 training, safety coordinator 2, and safety coordinator 3. So put those dates in there. And again, as I said before, they don't have to be in sequence, but we'd like to see what you have in regards to that. Again, instructions, please complete the Excel template provided for all requested grant items, and we're going to talk about that. Please have your mayor or top administrator, executive directors print and sign their name below. By signing, they approve the list of items being requested. Click on the blue square at the bottom so you can access those. And then this is where they're going to sign on that particular list. Here's the application checklist. Again, it has everything we talked about before. You got the copy of the seatbelt description, a documented use guidelines for SOPs. So if you have anything like the trenching equipment, confined space equipment, respirators, you would do that. A member employee attended LGRMS sponsored training. You're going to put that, where you attended for that. Receipt or purchase order attached for each requested item. You don't have to do that. And actually, we don't encourage you to purchase things, but if you have those, you can let us know. I'm still going to probably, when I ask for approval, I'm going to ask you send those to me. So I probably should remove that from the request. If applicant current in response to recommendations, so you can look and check that you've checked that. A copy of the signed written policy for safety meetings, proof of a sample documentation of a meeting or of those safety meetings, a copy of the signed written policy requiring self-inspections. So the way you can avoid, and if you've sent in multiple grants, you see where it says submitted safety meeting policy in previous years. If you've done that in the previous years, you've checked that box and you don't have to send it. It's just less paperwork for you. It's less cumbersome. And then the next thing is the proof sample of completed inspections. So if you completed inspections, we want to see documentation to that piece. The designated safety coordinator current on attendance. So we want to see any proof of that. So if they have certificates, send those in. If we've showed these multiple times, we have documentation that's been approved, you don't necessarily have to send that in. List all requested equipment that includes the expected cost, and we'll talk about that. And then if you have a premium over $100,000, you're going to have an action plan with a loss analysis, and you're going to have that signed. I'm going to show you that. Here's a question. If I took the crisis coordinator training in 2020, do I need to take it again? No, it's the same training, Donna. You do not need to take it again. But good question. And lastly, again, scan the completed application email. You're going to send that to Courtney Stepter, is really the best person to send it to. And if you want that list, you want to click this. If you have an electronic version, which I'll be sending to everybody on this call, you can click on that, and it will go to the items requested reimbursement Excel template. Here is the items requested reimbursement template. And we're going to go through how to complete this. As you can see, again, here's the instructions. Completely only one application per member. Applications can include both GRMA and CSFI items. Please use your computer keyboard to accurately input this. Again, we don't want it handwritten because we're actually going to cut and paste these items to cut and paste and send them, or put those in other documents. So please don't do that, or please use your computer keyboard to do that. All communications will be conducted via email. Data clarity and accuracy is really important. Do your spell check if you can. Next question: is the SCMI class the same as? Yes, that's the Safety Coordinator M1 class. That will be the same. But good question. Again, we want to know the city or town and or the authority, the date of the application. Again, put the key grant contact information on here. That's who we're going to go back to in regards to if we have questions regarding this information. You want to make sure, you have a full list. We encourage you to have as many items on this as you want. Even though it might be way over what you're budgeted or eligible for, you can make a wish list. Let us approve or not approve. That will really help you, and you can prioritize later based on the approval. You don't have to waste time. Oh, is that going to be approved, or is this going to be approved? We'll tell you after it's approved, and then you can decide your prioritization after it has been approved. If you look at this thing on the GRMA body camera, it has the explanation for how it will reduce work comp or GRMA claims. It will allow us to record the actions of our police officers. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Others, we'd like to know a little bit more detail. So if it's an obscure piece of equipment that you don't really see a lot, we'd like to know specifically what's it going to do. Well, it's going to help reduce lifting of our employees, or it's going to help reduce property damage because we've had a lot of vandalism. These cameras will do that. Whatever that might be, those are the things we'll use to determine if things are going to be approved. If you look at item number 4, is it GRMA or work comp? I'm not sure. You don't have to put that down. You don't know if you're not sure which one it goes in. That's fine. But you look at the explanation. It says sand. We really need it. That is not an explanation of how it's going to reduce workers' compensation or GRMA claims. We need to know why it's going to reduce workers' compensation. What is it going to do to help reduce that? That's what we're expecting. And more than likely, we won't approve it because we don't have the explanation if you don't put a good explanation up there first. Again, here's the standard explanation of approved items. Can the item requested reduce the risk of employee injury or workers' compensation claim? If the answer is, hey, this is how it's going to do it, it's more than likely going to be approved. Typically approved items include, and I'm not going to go through this list because I'm going to show you a list, and this is included in within the brochure we distributed. These are pre-approved workers' compensation items. The premise behind this particular list is they're broken into categories either by potential injury or by department. So you can go to specific departments, let's say law enforcement, and you can look at some of those things that are particular or already been pre-approved. Those things will not have to go through the committee. Those things will be approved, and you'll send it to them. Again, we don't encourage you, as you will say, within the purpose of this document is to provide members with a list of items that are pre-approved under the workers' compensation grant, safety grant. Warning, please don't purchase items until you receive an approval email. Again, don't make any purchases until you receive that email. Because I can't guarantee you they're going to be approved until I send that. Other items can be submitted and approved by the GMA board if you provide a legitimate explanation of how that item will assist. So if you have an item that is not on this list, and if you want it, you think it's going to reduce some type of risk, send it to us with the explanation, and we'll be happy to review it. And more than likely, if it can reduce those risks, it will be approved. You know, you look at one of the things, we really want to encourage items that are big ticket items. We don't want to encourage small ticket items. We expect that you buy those on your own. So we'll talk about those a little bit later. But if you look in the ergonomics, it says, and the last line on any equipment that will assist with reducing ergonomic hazards, hand trucks, crane lifts, will be reviewed and approved by the GMA board. Again, if you have those, we've approved those in the past. We won't. That's not an automatic approval, but it more than likely, if you can say this is going to reduce the risk of injury within our ergonomics, within our particular department, it's more than likely going to be approved under workers' compensation. Again, GRMA, or property and liability approved items. Can the item requested reduce the risk of a property liability claim? Again, typically, these are approved. If you look at the second bullet, I won't go through this. It goes through some different things, but Power DMS is included within that. That's a specific thing. We want to make sure if you're a police department, that's something that you can use to help you organize programs, to be better organized, to ensure you train people on a regular basis. One of the things that we encourage is state certification or the state certificate program through GACP. In order to do that, it's very difficult to manage without having a system like Power DMS. We don't just approve Power DMS, we approve others. But that's just a group that we've worked with and be happy to, again, so if you have a system that works as well, if not better, let us know. We'd love to approve that also. Again, this is a list of pre-approved items. Again, the purpose of this document is to provide members with a list of items that are pre-approved under GMA Safety and Liability Grant. Warning, please don't purchase items until you receive an appropriate email or approved email. Again, other items can be submitted and approved by the GMA board if you provide a legitimate explanation of how that item will assist in reducing the risk of, it should be reduce the risk of property and liability claims, not employee injury. That's for workers' compensation. So I apologize for that misprint. But again, the same way, you have a motor vehicle, a pre-approved motor vehicle items, or first aid items, or cyber theft items, or it'll go by department depending on the department. So you can look through that particular list. These are items that are not covered. So the grant will not cover personal protective equipment, PPE, less than $20 per pair. So if you have safety glasses, or if you have disposable dust masks, or you have hearing protection that is less than $20 a pair, we are not going to reimburse you for that. And that is something we're expecting you as a member to supply for your employees. This is really the design behind the grant items are really behind to ensure that you're going and finding risks that are outside that, and that you're providing those basic PPE things for your employees. Again, any weapons of any type, so guns or knives or tasers, we don't reimburse. Staff salary costs, general training requirements or specific positions, none of those are required. Again, police or fire academy training, general equipment that can be used for multiple purposes. So one of the things that I would love to approve, but we have not in the past, is equipment for office ergonomics. I'm going to still continue to work towards that, but we have not approved that in the past. I would still encourage you to submit if you have chairs or desks or other things. It's just the issue is, are we buying this because somebody wants a new chair? Or are we buying this because it's an ergonomic issue? Or any association dues or fees. Those are the things that will not be approved. You will receive a note from Courtney. This is from me, but you will receive a note from Courtney saying that we received your application, and everything we've received in that application is good, or we've received that application and things within your application, we still need certain items. So whether it's a policy expectation or training documentation, whatever it might be, we'll send that to you. You will then, if everything is good, your application is great, the items are approved or approved by the board, we will send you an approval email. I will send this to you. It will be sent, as I said before, to the mayor. It will say the town and have the mayor's name, and then it will talk about some additional things. This is the items that you will see. Again, I'm going to go to, there's a more updated version of this. I'm going to show that to you later, but again, provide a copy of the invoice for each approved item. It can be an invoice, it can be a credit card statement, anything that proves that you have paid that particular for that item. We want you to complete the proof of purchase reconciliation documentation, and I'm going to show that to you a little bit. Again, these should be sent to LGRMS and received before January 15th, 2023. So this is the 2021, but that's when you should put it. You're going to see the amount for work comp here. It'll match, typically it'll match either, if you max out your account, it'll look at that, or it will be less than that based on what you put in for work comp, and then your max level for GRMA. Here again, here's an updated version of this. That's what I sent out in 2021. Let's see. You have, again, this is amount, you can see the amount of $53 for the items listed below was not approved. So if you have items that are not approved, those safety glasses and other things, they will be readied out and then marked, labeled here and then marked below, so you can correspond with the two. Again, this is actually a letter from last year, and again, it has updated versions and the limits there, as we've kind of talked about before. And this is your proof of purchase reconciliation document. So people have a little bit of issue. It has the instructions on how to complete this. The purpose of this document is to provide a system to efficiently, effectively, and accurately reconcile proof of purchase documents to be processed for reimbursement. This system should ensure better communication and faster return on reimbursement. The problem was, and historically, people might have 30 different items, and they would send me a document. They would email me or scan 60 or 70 different documents where it showed the invoices and would show it from somewhere else, and I would be very, very confused. And then I would have to end up calling that person, the person that's managing this, and go through each and every document to ensure I know what is supposed to be reversed and what is not. So to simplify that, we put this together. Again, before scanning, print a number on the copy for each receipt or proof of purchase. So you take your invoice or you take your proof of purchase, and let's say you have multiple line items on one invoice. Let's say that on one invoice you have something for you have it's from Amazon, and on Amazon you have a list of items, and you have hand truck on one and high vis vest on the other. And on the high visibility vests, you'll mark a number 1. Again, hand mark a number 1 and circle it or put a number 1 during the hand truck. And then by the high vis vest where it's total, you'll put a number 2. And then that's what you'll put within your reconciliation document. The premise is ultimately to make it easier for me and ensure you're getting a quicker approval process. Review your items, ensure the totals at the bottom of the sheet are correct. Again, that total is what I'm going to be able to use in regards to making sure you get your full reimbursement. Either print this page or scan it or mail it. So you can just email me the completed Excel spreadsheet. Again, and this document will be sent to you with your approval email. A question: can safety quarterly meeting topics be done via email? No, we'd like to see those be done in person, especially at this point in time. Again, we kind of made a lot of flexibility under COVID. COVID's not so bad at this point in time, so we want to make sure you're doing these meetings on via live and in person. It's more effective because you send something to somebody via email. There's really no way to ensure that that information has gotten to that employee. But great question. Thank you so much. Again, action plan and loss analysis. So we've kind of went through the basics. If you have premiums under $100,000, you're done. There's nothing more. You can listen to this piece. I would actually encourage everybody, though, even if you don't have loss or premiums over $100,000, that you listen to this particular portion. You know, action planning is a key element to helping you reduce risk within your entity, and we want you to be able to do that. So the first step to action planning is really data analysis. It can be overwhelming, but we've really made it simple. So the first thing you can really do is send me an email and say, hey, can you send me my organization's loss analysis? So just get an email, my email address at dbeck@lgrms.com. Send me that request, and that analysis will be done for you. It's done it'll give you numbers for an overall contact type or type of cause for your overall organization and down to the department level. We really want you to look at what department has the highest rate of incident or what department has the biggest problem. So let's say that it's public works. You look at, they have the most claims, they have the most dollars claims. That's where we're going to focus. That's ultimately it. But ultimately, it's up to you where you're going to focus. You know your department. You know your people. And just because you have high number of claims and or high number of dollars associated with claims within a particular department doesn't necessarily mean you have the highest or best thing to focus on. It might not be a controllable trend. It might be a one-off that's already been corrected. It might be something that was not going to occur again. So why focus in that particular area? You know your numbers better than me, and I will trust you when you do your action plan to know those particular numbers. How do you complete the loss analysis section? And I'm going to go through this just a little bit. It gives you the instructions. Those things are, these instructions are on there. I'm not going to read these to you, but these are on the loss analysis tool. I'll be sending that tool out with my email. It talks about that. If you don't have it, let me know. I'd be happy to send that to you also. Again, here's the loss analysis that I was talking about that I sent in. It'll talk about year, and this is overall claims rate, and it's claims over $500. So this only counts claims over. We don't want to penalize members that are doing a great job of reporting. So that's why we've made it $500 or more. And if you've got a claim and it's not necessarily, it's a $0 claim, you put it in there just to report it. That's what this rate looks at. So I got to change this slide, but it looks at your rates. This is the by department. So it looks at which department has the highest percentage of claims. So if you look at this particular city, their Parks and Recs has about 5% of, well, it has 32% of losses. They only have 6 claims though within that. So is that where they should be focusing? I would say it's probably better off because 38% of claims and 23% of costs are within police. And more than likely that Parks and Recs claim was kind of a one-off. So that should be somewhere where they're focusing. And then there is, again, the claims by program. So whether it's property, motor vehicle, law enforcement operations, motor vehicles, or your contact type. And this goes down to a different level. So your property fire, property weather, a motor vehicle failed to yield, all those are in there. If you want more help with that, let me know. I'll be happy to explain some of those labels. And then it goes down to particular department levels. So you get your Parks and Recs. And as you can see within Parks and Recs, it was one claim, it was a fire, and it was for $1 million. And then this, you go to police claims, you look at that, motor vehicles are the biggest opportunity there. So that's what I would focus in on within the police department. Within your action plan, you're going to identify, once you've identified the departments, once you've identified you're going, what you want to do from or what you want to focus in within that department, let's say it's that police department, you're going to meet with the department leaders. We don't want you as the safety people doing this independently. You are responsible for applications and the grant. You are not responsible for that particular department. The person that's responsible for that particular department should be the person that's working to develop that action plan. Again, I have a webinar that goes specifically on action plan development, and I would encourage that. I'll try and send a link to you with that. But specifically, I would ask that you train that person and have them work with you on developing the action plan. You can go through them, share the list. I would actually have a big enough department. I would actually get more people than this, the chief or the department manager. I would get supervisors and employees. Tell them here's the issue. Tell them what are we going to do to resolve it. Because if it's within the department, they're more likely to take ownership of that particular action plan, and they're more likely to implement it. Again, if you want to establish a goal, what do you want to do? So you want to reduce, you had 20 motor vehicle accidents last year. We want to reduce those by 25%. So our goal is to only have 15 motor vehicle incidents. You can do it that way. You can do it based on claims, whatever it might be. Once you've identified a focused area and established a goal, brainstorm on how to reduce these incidents. So that's how we would like to see. And this is an example of an action plan. It has the place for the losses. It has the loss types, and then what departments you're focusing in on. Here's a question. Does in-car cameras for police cars fall into BWC category? I'm not sure what BWC category means. If you could elaborate on that, that would be great. Oh, body-worn cameras. First of all, it's the in-car cameras, I think within that pre-approved, we do both body cameras and in-car cameras. Those are already pre-approved. Both those items are pre-approved. Okay. And accountability. Again, you want to make sure within your action plan that you hold people accountable, that to get these particular things, these items done, that you have an owner identified, that you have a date that they're going to be completed, and that you have a way to monitor and measure that these things are being completed in a timely basis. Again, we want to see the leadership of not only the department, but also the overall leadership say, hey, I know what the loss analysis is, and I agree with the action plan, and that I will hold that department and myself accountable to complete that particular piece. So that is the end of the presentation. Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Anything from anybody? Okay, well, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. You guys all have a wonderful day. Again, I'll send this information out. If you have questions afterwards, don't hesitate to ask. If you have a complicated question, you can just pick up the phone and give me a call. If you have a less complicated question, you just email me. So thank you so much. We will talk later.